Hi, I'm Digi. So after like a bajillion years of being out of gaming due to finances and other life stuff, I finally got a gaming rig and started catching up on some games. I've been playing a lot of different horror games such as the Amnesia series, Soma, and the Resident Evil remakes, and I got to thinking about horror games and their relationship with puzzles. I think we've all noticed that from modern games to the classics, horror games are just full of puzzles, right? The RE2 remake lampshades this a bit by having you find a pamphlet from a company that supposedly designed a sewer system full of them. They call it playfulness. Regardless of whether or not they make sense in the context of the game, tons of horror games are like this. But why? When did it get this way? Was it always like this? If not, when did it start? Come on, let's find out. It'd be really easy to get bogged down in horror game history or argue as to what counts as a horror game in the very early days. I want to take us all the way back to the past, to play the text adventures. Yeah, that's right. Did you know there were 3 horror-themed adventure games for Apple II computers? These were Scott Adams' trio of adventure games: The Count, Pyramid of Doom, and Voodoo Castle. They released these all the way back in 1979, a full 46 years ago. And as you may know, puzzles were more or less all you had to work with back then. You collect items and you figure out what to do with them elsewhere. Later, there were graphical text adventure games like 1982's Transylvania. This game had you figure out what to do with available items, such as scaring away a vampire with a cross, or shooting a werewolf with a silver bullet. So were these the first horror games with puzzles in them? It's hard to say. Nobody really even mentions the 1979 trio of text adventures when you look up first horror games ever on YouTube. In my opinion, horror hadn't quite come into its own as a genre of video games. You could probably have thought of it as a subgenre of adventure games back then. By the mid-late 80s, you start to see that graphical text interface evolve into point-and-click style games like Uninvited and Shadowgate. Sure enough, these games are full of puzzles too, like determining the best time and place to use these spells you find in the library. Games like Sweet Home majorly advanced the genre by introducing what we now call survival horror elements, as well as multiple characters with specializations suitable for certain situations, like this Master of Vacuuming. Alright, so here we are. It seems like a lot of these games had puzzles just because there wasn't much else they could have you do. Programming limitations, I guess. But the thing we notice as time goes on is that the genre kinda splits into multiple directions. You've got Sweet Home and Uninvited on one hand, but on the other hand you have games like Doom, Castlevania, and Splatterhouse. These games are mostly action and have little if any puzzle solving. So, why did the puzzle institution, for lack of a better word, persist all this time? Turns out it makes sense if you think about it from a game dev's point of view. First, let's talk about pacing. Generally, pacing is described as the intervals by which the game elements are introduced to the player, often applying to game mechanics. For example, in Half-Life 2, where they have you play the game for a few hours, getting used to the physics of the engine, before they go ahead and give you the gravity gun. Immediately afterward, you have plenty of opportunity to use it in Ravenholm. Pacing also applies to narrative storytelling. Setting the pacing too fast or too slow can make the story feel rushed and overwhelming on one hand, or like a slog on the other. Let's see an example of bad pacing in a horror game. This is Retsupre reacting to a game called Real Horror Stories in 2014.
Ah!
Oh wait, here we go.
Here we go.
Oh.
The slightly colors are driving by.
Maybe not. Stop looking at your photo and get out of the forest. Oh no.
Oh no, he got Joker paint on him.
The jump scares come one after another. It makes the whole thing really funny. In most horror games with puzzles, the puzzles gate your advancement to the next area. It puts space between the player and the next spooky or unsettling moment by making you focus on something besides how scared you are. Or aren't. This prevents you from being desensitized to the scares. Point number 2. Challenge and longevity. I think this follows pretty logically from the previous point. I don't want to use the term padding here because that has a negative connotation, but challenging puzzles in your game increases the number of tools required from the player's skill set, which increases the time it takes to beat the game. I think if Resident Evil only required you to blast zombies and snakes and bees, it probably wouldn't have taken so long to finish. Even today, you can't have your customers finish the game too fast, unless you're only going to charge a minimal amount for it. Number 3, guys, I think it's just tradition at this point. Seriously, pacing doesn't have to be done with puzzles. You could do it with a long travel or exploration segment instead. But I think a lot of devs take it as an intellectual and professional challenge to design puzzles for us, and plenty of gamers enjoy them. In fact, asking for a horror game without them might just get you made fun of. In this way, it's kind of a self-sustaining thing, you know? The games that don't have a lot of puzzles tend towards first or third person shooters, multiplayer games like Dead by Daylight, or more experimental games like the Observation Duty series. However, I think you're kind of robbing yourself of something if you try to avoid them. Honestly, I just look stuff up when I'm stumped. Well, there you have it. Hey, if I entertained you at all, please consider checking me out on Twitch sometime. I play lots of weird games, like this Jesus Christ anime visual novel. But the angel said to us, horror games and upside down challenges. Hope to see you soon. Bye.